Part 1, Chapter 1 of A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. A Study in Scarlet Part 1, being a reprint from the reminiscences of John H. Watson, M.D., late of the Army Medical Department. Chapter 1, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London, and proceeded to Netley to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the army. Having completed my studies there, I was duly attached to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers as assistant surgeon.
华森提到了他作为外科医生的经历，上图是作为外科医生经常要用到的东西。你知道这些都是什么吗？各有什么作用吗？
The regiment was stationed in India at the time, and before I could join it, the Second Afghan War had broken out. On landing at Bombay, I learned that my corps had advanced through the passes, and was already deep in the enemy's country. I followed, however, with many other officers who were in the same situation as myself, and succeeded in reaching Kandahar in safety, where I found my regiment and at once entered upon my new duties. The campaign brought honours and promotion to many, but for me it had nothing but misfortune and disaster. I was removed from my brigade and attached to the Berkshires, with whom I served at the fatal battle of Maiwand. There I was struck on the shoulder by a Jezail bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed the subclavian artery.
华森提到他被结扎尔子弹击中，你知道结扎尔是什么吗？他的子弹可能是什么样子呢？
I should have fallen into the hands of the murderous Ghazis, had it not been for the devotion and courage shown by Murray, my orderly, who threw me across a pack-horse and succeeded in bringing me safely to the British lines. Worn with pain, and weak from the prolonged hardships which I had undergone, I was removed, with a great train of wounded sufferers, to the base hospital at Peshawar. Here I rallied, and had already improved so far as to be able to walk about the wards, and even to bask a little upon the veranda, when I was struck down by enteric fever, that curse of our Indian possessions.
华森提到，他患上了伤寒。你知道伤寒是什么吗？可能会是上图中哪种细胞形状呢？
For months my life was despaired of, and when at last I came to myself and became convalescent, I was so weak and emaciated that a medical board determined that not a day should be lost in sending me back to England. I was dispatched accordingly in the troop ship Orontes, and landed a month later on Portsmouth jetty, with my health irretrievably ruined, but with permission from a paternal government to spend the next 9 months in attempting to improve it. I had neither kith nor kin in England, and was therefore as free as air, or as free as an income of 11 shillings and sixpence a day will permit a man to be.
华森提到，他的收入大约为1天11先令6便士，你知道那是什么概念吗？上图虽然为日元，但是你可以把它们换算过来吗？
Under such circumstances, I naturally gravitated to London, that great cesspool into which all the loungers and idlers of the empire are irresistibly drained. There I stayed for some time at a private hotel in the Strand, leading a comfortless, meaningless existence, and spending such money as I had, considerably more freely than I ought. So alarming did the state of my finances become, that I soon realized that I must either leave the metropolis and rusticate somewhere in the country, or that I must make a complete alteration in my style of living.
华森提到，他发现他的经济状况变得令人担忧。此时，你觉得华森应该是上图中的哪种心情？
Choosing the latter alternative, I began by making up my mind to leave the hotel, and to take up my quarters in some less pretentious, and less expensive, domicile. On the very day that I had come to this conclusion, I was standing at the Criterion bar, when someone tapped me on the shoulder, and, turning round, I recognized young Stamford, who had been a dresser under me at Bart's. The sight of a friendly face in the great wilderness of London is a pleasant thing indeed to a lonely man. In old days, Stamford had never been a particular crony of mine, but now I hailed him with enthusiasm, and he, in his turn, appeared to be delighted to see me.
华森提到，斯坦福以前并不算是他的亲近的朋友或密友，此时他用了哪一个词表示亲近的朋友、密友？此题没有选项，请根据你的记忆填空。
In the exuberance of my joy, I asked him to lunch with me at the Holborn, and we started off together in a hansom.
华森提到，他们一起乘坐一辆双轮出租车出发了。你觉得他们选择了上途中的哪一辆呢？
Whatever have you been doing with yourself, Watson?
He asked in undisguised wonder as we rattled through the crowded London streets.
You are as thin as a lath and as brown as a nut.
I gave him a short sketch of my adventures, and had hardly concluded it by the time we reached our destination.
Poor devil,
he said commiseratingly, after he had listened to my misfortunes.
What are you up to now?
Looking for lodgings, I answered, trying to solve the problem as to whether it is possible to get comfortable rooms at a reasonable price.
华森提到，他想以合理的价格找到一个舒适的住所。你认识上图中的各种房型吗？你会推荐哪个给华森呢？
That's a strange thing,
remarked my companion.
You're the second man today that has used that expression to me.
And who was the first? I asked.
A fellow who is working at the chemical laboratory up at the hospital. He was bemoaning himself this morning because he could not get someone to go halves with him in some nice rooms which he had found, and which were too much for his purse.
By Jove, I cried, if he really wants someone to share the rooms and the expense, I am the very man for him. I should prefer having a partner to being alone. Young Stamford looked rather strangely at me over his wine-glass.
You don't know Sherlock Holmes yet,
he said.
Perhaps you would not care for him as a constant companion.
Why? What is there against him?
Oh, I didn't say there was anything against him. He is a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science. As far as I know, he is a decent fellow enough.
A medical student, I suppose? Said I.
No, I've no idea what he intends to go in for. I believe he is well up in anatomy, and he is a first-class chemist. But as far as I know, he has never taken out any systematic medical classes. His studies are very desultory and eccentric. But he has amassed a lot of out-of-the-way knowledge which would astonish his professors.
Did you never ask him what he was going in for? I asked.
No, he is not a man that is easy to draw out, though he can be communicative enough when the fancy seizes him.
I should like to meet him, I said. If I am to lodge with anyone, I should prefer a man of studious and quiet habits. I am not strong enough yet to stand much noise or excitement. I had enough of both in Afghanistan to last me for the remainder of my natural existence. How could I meet this friend of yours?
He is sure to be at the laboratory,
returned my companion.
He either avoids the place for weeks, or else he works there from morning to night. If you like, we shall drive round together after luncheon.
Certainly, I answered, and the conversation drifted away into other channels.
斯坦福提到，夏洛克·福尔摩斯要么好久不见人影，要么在化学实验室里工作，从早到晚。你认识上图中这些实验室器材吗？各有什么作用呢？
As we made our way to the hospital after leaving the Holborn, Stamford gave me a few more particulars about the gentleman whom I proposed to take as a fellow lodger.
You mustn't blame me if you don't get on with him,
he said.
I know nothing more of him than I have learned from meeting him occasionally in the laboratory. You proposed this arrangement, so you must not hold me responsible.
If we don't get on, it will be easy to part company, I answered. It seems to me, Stamford, I added, looking hard at my companion, that you have some reason for washing your hands of the matter. Is this fellow's temper so formidable, or what is it? Don't be mealy-mouthed about it.
It is not easy to express the inexpressible, he answered with a laugh. Holmes is a little too scientific for my taste. It approaches to cold-bloodedness. I could imagine him giving a friend a little pinch of the latest vegetable alkaloid, not out of malevolence, you understand, but simply out of a spirit of inquiry in order to have an accurate idea of the effects. To do him justice, I think he would take it himself with the same readiness. He appears to have a passion for definite and exact knowledge.
Very right, too.
Yes, but it may be pushed to excess. When it comes to beating the subjects in the dissecting room with a stick, it is certainly taking rather a bizarre shape.
Beating the subjects?
Yes, to verify how far bruises may be produced after death. I saw him at it with my own eyes.
And yet you say he is not a medical student.
No, heaven knows what the objects of his studies are. But here we are, and you must form your own impressions about him.
斯坦福提到了挫伤，上图是我们受伤时常用的创口贴，你认识几种呢？各用在什么场合？
As he spoke, we turned down a narrow lane and passed through a small side door, which opened into a wing of the great hospital.